I certainly appreciate you taking the time to talk with me. I have a tagline that I use that if you want to change the world, you have to start by changing your world. And so much of that revolves around thinking and consciousness and just how we approach different subjects. And I would love to share your work with people because I think it's extremely important on the individual basis where if we want, like I said, we want to see that big turnaround, we have to start with ourselves. And you guys offer more information that we can get to in several days on that topic. But, the basic idea today would be to introduce you and your approach to the individual changing things about themselves to then manifest in the external is where I wanted to head with that. Does any of that make sense?
Sure, I understand.
Sounds good. Sounds like you're on the same page as we are.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it. And like I mentioned in that very first email, I've read True Blood and also True Reality of Sexuality. And I actually heard Stewart on Coast to Coast the one time I don't know how they let him through because they tend to filter out the better guests. But I actually heard that one live, so I've been paying attention for a while.
Yeah, it's a while ago now.
I was actually on their show twice.
You made it back?
Yeah.
They said that they liked him so much they were going to have him on as a regular guest, and then they had him on one time, and then another time, about 3 months later, Stuart?
About 3 months, yeah.
Yeah, and then after that, they wrote, when I said, when are you going to have him back again? Everybody keeps asking. They said, well, he's told his story, and how many times can people listen to it?
So now I see the people that aren't getting the attention they deserve are probably the ones that are telling the closest to what we need to hear.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, I think that shows where their true intentions lie.
Yeah, I agree.
They're more for the entertainment dollar instead of the see, because I term it this way: the truth movement's on full blown reruns now. We're familiar with state-sponsored terror. We've got the idea that cops abuse their power. The politicians are corrupt. And and then it's like, okay, we've got it, and then like tomorrow, come learn how politicians are corrupt. Listen to another cop beat somebody, and we'll talk about the next possible false flag event, which is fine for those who are not yet awake. And I don't disparage the awakening crowd, but there's millions of us now who don't really need direction, but need a better set of solutions. And so I've boiled that down to first, just the way we approach stuff. And now that consciousness is becoming a big topic in the alternative community, I would really love to hear your guys' just basic, first, before we even get into mind patterns or programming, just basically what consciousness is, because this may sound weird, but I don't even think many people even understand how to think, let alone where it comes from and the power of it. So, yeah, the first question would basically be your general take on consciousness itself.
Well, basically, there's only one consciousness in existence, and that's the consciousness of God-mind, of which we are all a part, and then it projects itself out into many different realities that it creates in order to experience itself. And each of us as a soul personality is really a band or a collection of the thoughts that we have assimilated because of our experiences and understandings that become unique to us as an extension of the God mind, so that our consciousness is really basically a collection of thought bands and emotional reactions to them that then create other experiences and reflections within the context of the God mind. So in effect, we can only think in the context of the vastness of God mind, which is infinite.
Where do you see that in a physical sense, interfacing with the physical human? Because I fully agree the infinite energy, and you guys term it God mind, is all that there is. But when you try and explain this to people on an individual basis, the brain obviously, plays a part, but I don't think consciousness comes through the brain.
I use an analogy, and I use the analogy that thoughts are like film, the brain is the projector, and physical reality is the screen. So if we are not happy with the movie that's playing around us and in front of us, we need to change the film, which is the way we think. And what we think then will be projected out, and a different experience will be projected around us. It's as simple as that.
And what about the heart or the chakra system in general as it relates to consciousness? Are they intertwined, or is that a separate function after the mind projects?
Well, again, there's a flow chart that I use, and we use the thoughts or the mind pattern of each individual, which is electromagnetic in nature. And as it ascends into physical reality, it attracts atomic structure, which is free-floating in all existence. That atomic structure then forms around the patterns of the electromagnetic mind energy, which then form the basis of protein bases, which are the foundation of the DNA, which then create the body. So literally, the body is what you think. And the chakra system is really the nerve ganglions or bundles of nerves that button in the electromagnetic energy of the soul personality into that physical body. And that's why each body is tailor-made to the individual who has that particular mind pattern. It's kind of like a tailor-made suit that only fits that person. And that's the relationship between the chakra system and the mind pattern, which is different than the aura, because the aura is the reflection of the emotions and can change, and the thoughts that can change at any moment, whereas the chakra system is the internal core or foundational mind patterns that are unique to all of humanity as a species.
Well, and let me ask you this too, because I've heard people say, and here's the way I describe it, like the economic system situation that we're facing isn't something being done to us. Though it is manipulated, it's the macrocosm of everyone's individual inability to stay within their means, buy on credit, etc. Or the weather patterns are, in a local area. For example, after I remember the tsunamis killed a couple 100,000 people in Indonesia, there was bizarre weather patterns immediately after that. Or I think his name's Greg Bearden has measured geomagnetic anomalies on 9/11. And all of this relates to the collective consciousness. When large numbers of people have similar mind patterns, they can affect things externally on the macro scale. And I heard somebody say this the other day, and I thought it was a perfect question for you, that the solar, what they call them coronal mass ejections throughout history, were caused as a reaction to the collective consciousness, whatever event was occurring globally, that it's not the sun that affects us, that it's us that affects the sun. Do you think the collective consciousness is that powerful, or would the sun be on another level?
The human group mind, or the species mind pattern, is what creates the physical reality in which we exist, so that we all, as human beings, the almost 7 billion inhabitants of this planet, are what together foundationally project out the Earth, the solar system, the star, that affects us. So correct, we are responsible for every experience in that physical reality because we're creating it collectively and individually. And so when a person lives in an area that's volcanic, for example, or there's a whole bunch of people live in such an area, that you can be sure that the people in that area have a mind pattern of suppressing emotions and stuffing it down till it becomes explosive, and then they can't hold it in anymore. And that's when the volcano erupts, is a reflection of that group mind pattern. And we can extrapolate that to nationalities, to continents, to the entire planet and the solar system. And so as far as the sun and the coronal mass ejections, or CMEs as they're called, Yes, they are a reflection also of the rhythms of the group mind or species mind that projects that out. But we also have to take into account that we're not alone in the solar system. There are other species now inhabiting the planets in the solar system, both physically and non-physically. So they also, in conjunction with us, are responsible for the solar events that are happening.
However, you do want to remember that each person as an individual has to add some sort of thought energy into it in order for it to happen in his or her lifeline. So, for example, let's say you have an accident in your car. What most people do is, as we teach about releasing whatever is within the physical structure, whatever is within the auric field, up to your oversoul, back into God mind. Well, if you don't do that, then your thoughts have to go somewhere, and that's when they go out and they collect. So, for instance, if you have angers and resentments and bitterness, they can float around you. They float around your vehicle. When you have enough of them, they actually create a living thing that energy has to be released, and boom, you have a car accident. So if you extrapolate that into your volcanic action or whatever earth earth geological event that you want to talk about, along with the other people who are having those same kinds of reactions because they're not releasing to their oversoul and God mind, they're just letting this stuff float around in this reality. Well, what people don't realize is not only is it floating around, it's still attached to them because it is a part of them. It's just uncontrolled energy, uncontrolled thought forms, uncontrolled internal substance that's not controlled or directed. What the Illuminati does is when they provoke those kind of thoughts and feelings in you, then they collect it and then they propel it, which allows them, let's say, to help exacerbate something that's already formulating. So they're really just using you against you. That's why you're really not a victim. You are adding to the pot and you don't know how to stop it. What Stewart and I teach you to do is to pass it up, give it back to your source basically, and therefore it's not going to harm the physical body, it's not going to harm your environment, it's not going to harm your life experiences. So you begin to act in conscious awareness, and everything that you do basically comes from your oversoul. All experiences come from your oversoul. So therefore you want to return all experiences to the oversoul so that it's not floating around out there for anybody just to pick up and do whatever they want, or for it to just create a mind of its own and do whatever it wants. So there's lots of stuff going on out there, and people don't understand, as you talked about, Jacob, right in the beginning, how much that one single thought can affect their entire life, and not just their life, the life of society, the life of the Earth itself, and as Stewart's talking about, projecting it on into the solar system and beyond.
So you realize what we're saying here, that we're pretty beautiful, powerful creatures, and we're not these little Johnny Six-Packs that, were born in some prison planet.
You are connected, self, oversoul, God, mind. Your power source is the greatest source that exists. So it is total illusion that you have no power, and people buy into that at a whim.
And so that also then means when people discuss things like the Illuminati and the New World Order and depopulation and false flag terror, and the fiat currency and all of that, we actually have the ability to manifest something different with or without their evil or non-evil intention.
Absolutely. It's like, people complain about the food source. Well, who's buying McDonald's? Who's going out there and buying? Who uses the credit cards? Who buys into, I can't get a job out there, or my house can't sell. If you buy into that because you've been inundated with it, then you're adding to it. You are a partner. You are an active participant in their plot. If you don't buy into it, and you create your own mind pattern that doesn't, well, the best way I have to guess, I have to go back just a minute or two and explain that when you think in archetype or shape, you think in color, and you think in tone. And so if you don't have matching color, tone, and archetype to what's being projected out there, then it cannot affect you. You can walk through it very cleanly and clearly, but they bring out the color. They bring out the archetype or symbol. They bring out the tone. So you begin matching it, and then it's real easy for them to infiltrate your own space, and you don't know what's you and what's not you. And that's what Stewart and I teach you. What are you? First of all, sometimes people find out what they are by finding out what they are not. So we teach people to take out what's not you, to deprogram, to take out all the artificial stuff, to remove what was put into you by your peers, your teachers, your parents, your siblings, wherever you are, your coworkers. Take it out and find out your own pure frequency, and then you know what's you and what's not. And when these bombardments come in, you can feel, hey, that's not me. It doesn't belong. And out it goes. You don't accept such things. But people willingly accept it, consciously and unconsciously. But they don't know what they're accepting. They are really have become mindless. And they are certainly participants in that process.
In one of David Icke's early video documentaries, this isn't his work, but he's showing like plates of sand and iron filings and different particle type things that they hit with the frequency, and then awesome looking patterns form in the sand, or these iron filings start to rotate and form planet like and then solar system like structures, and he's showing the frequency, I guess, manipulation that occurs in physically manifesting things, basically.
Well, and remember, too, Stuart, you probably know the name of that man. Remember the water book?
Are you Dr. Emoto?
Yes.
Yes.
He also did the same thing with water crystals. And so really that's what we're teaching people to do, is you be mindful of your words. Well, words are color, tone, archetype, but people don't recognize that. And they don't recognize the foundations of creation, which is what we teach, color, tone, archetype. That's really all it is. And so when you break it down to the basics and you understand what you are, how you got here, and what you did to get here, and then you can undo what you don't like, you can enhance the positive, you can take out the negative, and then you can begin to consciously build the life that you want versus feel like you're a helpless victim. There's no reason. That's total illusion. You are connected, self, over soul, God, mind, the greatest force that exists. So you can't say, I can't get anywhere because I don't know anybody, and my house doesn't sell because, it's bad luck. You are a conscious participator in absolutely every single thing you do. So you have to go within, you have to figure out what's going on with you, and that can be darn hard work and scary when you find out and recognize, hey, I'm not the person I thought that I was, and that can be both positive and negative. So it's a big challenge for people, and the people that come to our work are really people who are invested in self-change, and a lot of people can't handle what we have to do because it's easier to sit around and complain and be the victim than to get up and do your work and make a change.
That's the beauty of the beast system, that once you recognize, on the surface it seems so horrible and horrendous, that then feeling like the victim is easier, and so people just take that path consciously.
Absolutely.
And that was, and when you were talking about the colors, where I wanted to say about that David Icke part, when I realized so much of reality is frequency, light, sound, brain waves, thought waves, light waves, sound waves, and I started really contemplating the frequency aspect of it. I could cut to the core of a lot of information just by tuning into the frequency. So, for example, I could tell when somebody was being sincere or not sincere, basically by the frequency, regardless of the actual words coming out of their mouth. Because a really skilled liar, it sounds pretty, but the frequency's different. And then it wasn't until I ran across your work adding the color to it that then it's like almost getting on one of those electrogravitic, saucers. You could just zoom through information because you could tell really quick, what's beneficial, what's not beneficial. Is this going to create a better me or not a better me?
Right.
Go
ahead.
I'll just say, and you don't fall for the scam so easily, because the scam has new versions and new chapters, and once people figure out, an old scam, they'll invent new roadblocks to try and slow you down. But when you mix the color with the frequency and the archetype, man, you could just like I said, it's almost effortless when you combine those three into figuring out, the source and intention of whatever it is you're dealing with.
I was just going to mention in the Decoding Your Life book, that's what I talk about in there, is how to figure out if the words are matching with what's coming out of somebody's mouth. And so they're very simple exercises that if people are willing, they can do that book. And the other one is Hyperspace Helper. Those two together teach our basic work, our basic exercises. And they're very simple things to do. They're not complicated, and they're not things you can't understand, and you don't have to, have 1,000 degrees, and we don't tell you to keep coming back every time. It's already there. You just have to do the work. And if it seems so simple, and I've had people do this, it's too simple, they don't want it. They want things that are complex.
Right.
And so, it's okay. It's whatever you want. Here's something that works. You can try it. See what happens for you. But it's very easy once you get the idea of it.
And that's the I guess the fear also is that people are so invested in the lie. Once they realize they do have power over it, it's that easy. You mean this whole, I spent my whole life worrying about X, Y, and Z, and I can actually change it? Then they really get freaked out because I guess admitting you're a beautiful, being of light is a hard statement for a lot of people to make. But I really
you're not sometimes.
Yeah, it's like a wave or a frequency. There's ups and downs, and you've got to combine the two to make a complete circuit.
It's a positive and a negative. God mind contains all things, both positive and negative, and that's where the New Age came in. That first of all, that old religions taught everybody that they were sinners, and then they went the other extreme in the New Age. It says everybody is fabulous and wonderful. So they're flim-flamming you back and forth, where God mind contains everything. You are both positive and negative, and you have to look at both. You can't ignore one or the other without coming unbalanced. You must look at both, and both are okay because both are a part of God mind.
And a lot of what we consider to be negatives are sometimes beneficial. We're so quick to jump on, for example, let's say your car stalls, and you say, oh my God, this ruined my day and yada whatever. But then, you look at the newspaper, and on the street you were heading down, 45 seconds before you got there. There was a 3-car pileup and 4 fatalities. So sometimes what we consider negative actually is a positive, and that's where I think you're talking about if you are considering both sides, that it's not all good or all bad, and there's a good mix of both, and really examine things to see, look around and take it in. Is this really good or bad, or a little bit of both? Because I've noticed so many people are ready to jump on, the negative bandwagon when there's a whole lot of, beneficial, positive things in that negative wagon, that if we, just remove that label for a second and see it for what it is, teaching tools are often disguised as pain.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a lot of people don't understand that a lot of times the negative circumstances are just a redirection of your life. So you need to redirect so that you can move on to a different path.
So back to the subject of mind patterns, Stewart, let's talk about how we did a good job on the macro. On the micro level, let's take the negative ones first and get them out of the way. Things like disease, how do mind patterns physically manifest in a body?
Well, for example, let's use a very big one that's common these days, that's cancer. And physically, all cancer is caused by a virus that mutates the cellular DNA and fuses its own DNA and then creates wild cellular growth. That's the physical version of it, despite whatever environmental factors they may be. But from a mind pattern perspective, all cancer is held resentment that then manifests in the body in the form of this illness. So, for example, if someone has a cancer of the stomach, for example, is a common one. Stomach symbolizes what we absorb in life, our experiences that we need to accept and understand. If we resent what we're learning about our life, and we hold that resentment for a long period of time, then we will develop cancer in the stomach. Women develop breast cancer. Breasts represent nurturing, both giving and receiving. So a woman these days, why breast cancer is so high is because of our society where females feel like they are no longer able to nurture others and they're not being nurtured by others, and this becomes a resentment to them, and so they develop breast cancer. And much breast cancer turns out to be a higher percentage in the right side because that represents nurturing male figures. And these days, males don't receive nurturing from females, nor do they nurture them, because they're so busy with their careers and material things that people become things instead of objects of unconditional love. So this is a cursory look at why some illnesses develop. People have a lot of heart issues. Heart represents the emotions. There's a lot of, for example, the heart chakra should be a medium green color, which represents oxygen and emotion. But I see a lot of people who have red and blue, abandonment issues, emotional isolation, hurt and frustration in close personal relationships. And so over time, they develop heart problems or lung problems, which are very common these days. So this is a basic idea of how the mind and the emotions develop and are held until the cells reflect those mind patterns and emotions.
And like Janet was saying earlier, being abandoned, you can't ignore it. Those emotions and thought patterns are there, but releasing them properly or completing that circuit with yourself is the best way to deal with it, because bottling it up or trying to repress it physically manifests it. And that is a positive thing, because your physical being is trying to show you where this is at and what needs to be released. Is that correct?
Well, we do need to be a monitor of our mind patterns and examine them. And a good way to do that for those who may be confused about that is simply look at what the experiences are in your life. If you are very bad in relationships and you constantly attract people who do not stay with you or who treat you in a poor manner, then it's a good likelihood that you have abandonment issues, low self-worth, self-sabotage, self-punishment, etc. And then you would look at where in my life did these mind patterns develop and become imprinted on me, and then I need to go back and release that. And for example, in our work, in Healer's Handbook and Hyperspace Helper, we have the Golden Altar Release Visualization, Growing Up the Child Within, Oversoul work, etc. All of these are designed to go into the mind patterns and remove them so that we no longer go into that repetitive cycle.
And while you're speaking of those techniques, I just wanted to mention my niece Charlotte is 11, and she practices the ultimate protection technique that you guys refer to quite a bit in your work. Mm-hmm. And she's actually diverted storm clouds around her house. So
excellent.
So she wanted
me.
It's
amazing, and we do get people with visible results. And that's what I tell people, that lots of times you think you're doing nothing, but you're always moving something. And the more that you practice it, the more confidence you get, and which allows the pathways to build and bring in the ability to do what it is that your goal is. And so, and I think you've made a great point that children do these very easily because they don't tend to block and sabotage as much because they don't have as much practice doing that as we as adults do. But I certainly have taught my children since, they could talk and before, and with excellent results. And the people that we know that teach their children, they have wonderful results. And the children teach them because they're so creative. They come up with new and better ways to do these things. So it's a phenomenal thing what these children can do.
We've done that also whenever there's a tornado warning or something like that coming this way. I always use the double, or I use sometimes triple ultimate protection around the house, the town, the area, and you can actually see on the radar map as it's coming across the lake, you can actually see it split and go around us.
And then, like I said, it's like exercising. It's not fun at first. It takes a little bit of work, but once you start to see results, it becomes easier. And you know, and watching an 11-year-old girl have success with your techniques, you know, I mean, how can you argue with that?
Oh, it's amazing. And the other thing you want to remember, too, is that your thoughts create a neural network actually through your brain. And so that's one reason why it's a little bit more challenging for adults and children, is because that you have a set path that those thoughts or the electrical impulses travel through your brain. It's a set path. And so when you change your way of thinking, what you really have to do is you're closing off these neural networks that are already open, and you have to rebuild. You have to rebuild into the brain itself. And that's when it becomes more automatic, and that's where the challenge is for a lot of people. And people can give up very easily, which, you know, that's because we don't have, the perseverance, I'll say. You know, it's kind of been taken out of us. It's bred out of us. We want, again, the instant gratification kind of society that we have. And even sometimes people will say, well, I've been working at this for 3 months, 6 months, a year. And, you know, I say, you know what, I've got some things in me I'm working on for decades. So I don't really have a lot of empathy if you're not where you're supposed to be within 3 months, or you think you're supposed to be within 3 or 6 months or a year. It's a process. And everything is different. You know, you have to figure out what that process is for you, what the journey means for you, how you're going to rewire your brain. It's really rewiring it yourself on a conscious basis. And the fact that it doesn't happen overnight, it doesn't happen in that instant, in a way is a blessing, because you don't know enough to create the most perfect way for you. So your oversoul gives you the gift of time, even though time in itself is an illusion, but it gives you that gift of time so that you can refine what you want and how you're going to get there and how you're going to release what you don't need. Because people don't know. You know, they're really starting off consciously without a clue. And so we have to get that connection going. And once the connections are going again, it's amazing what people can accomplish. But you must understand the process and appreciate that process for what it is.
And I like how you said that, because that's another point I try and re-stress to people, especially with, you know, things like the 9/11 evidence. We're not, you know, a lot of people think, oh, wow, I figured out, you know, the Illuminati, the New World Order, you know, that part is done. You know, I've got it. The truth movement or, you know, the change we want to see is a lifelong process. We're not going to have it all figured out by the time we're 30 and then just ride on that set of laurels the rest of the way. This is a lifelong process.
That's right. It's always going to be something going on because that's life. God's mind is always in a constant state of creation. And so are people. They're in a constant state of creation. And that's why it's so easy to get people through the sexuality end of it, because sexuality is really about your creative energy. And so people want to create, except before that creative energy aspect reaches their brain, they corral it down in the root chakra, and then they flim-flam people back and forth and tell them they're, you know, sexually free and whatever, and they give them the Illuminati's idea of sexuality versus the true idea of sexuality. And people think, you know, this is great because it feels good, and they don't get any further than that. So every time people try movement, the Illuminati is right there to corral them into a particular aspect so they don't grow anymore. And people accept that. They are the willing victim. They don't stop and think, geez, maybe there's more. They just think, hey, this works, and I go with it.
I've heard it put this way. Have you, either of you, ever seen the movie The Truman Show?
I haven't seen it, but I know about it.
Yeah, for those listening that may not know, Jim Carrey is essentially in a giant reality show. He was born into it. His entire life, everyone in his family and community are all, you know, actors on a set. And as he grows up, he figures more and more of this out. And every time he gets a piece of the puzzle and he wants to leave, you know, there's these roadblocks that magically appear in his way. Or, you know, and that's just, I think, a real good analogy of what she was saying, of how, you know, the Illuminati does design roadblocks once you've freed yourself from, you know, cage A. Sometimes, you know, you ran right into cage B, and you got to realize that, like we were saying, it's a lifelong process, and to stay on your toes, to say the least, is probably a good approach.
absolutely. That's, people a lot of times they find that, and especially that New Age movement created a lot of traps for people because they will go from one thing to another thing to another thing to another thing, and they think that they're getting more answers, but they're really just asking the same questions, and they're getting the same answers, but in a different way, whether it's Reiki master or runes or tarot or psychics or, aura reading or, there's so many things that goes on and on and on, and they don't understand. They're really being led down from one cage into another cage into another cage. And it's real interesting to watch people because oftentimes we get people who've been through what I call these New Age things, the propaganda, and they finally have their head clear and they realize these things aren't working. Then they find our work. And this is what frees them from everything that they have been in before because they didn't have the tools, but they thought they had the tools. So I think your analogy is very good.
And one more question on mind patterns. We've kind of discussed the macro level, the micro level, in as far as disease goes. What are some positive mind patterns? How can people manifest the change they would consider positive with the same idea?
Well, my perspective is there really are no positive or negative mind patterns. There's just mind patterns. And how you look at them is a perspective. The Soviet Union used to think what they did was a good thing, but the Americans thought it was a bad thing. It was a matter of perspective. So what's good for one may not be good for another. So I think that experience, thoughts, etc. are neutral, and then we need to interpret for ourselves individually what that means to us and how we use the experience. So to go back to that question, my answer would generally be look at what you are experiencing, both physically, emotionally, in your life, and if you're not happy with those experiences and you want to change them, look at the mind patterns that are creating them, and then see what they are, and then you release them, and then create new mind patterns that will lead you in a different direction. So I tend to stay away from the positive-negative thing because it's really a personal, individual, and a matter of perspective. I think that most people are stuck in a rut. They don't want to move from where they are because they're afraid to. They don't know what the difference will be if they change the way they think. They associate themselves a lot with their thoughts. I'm too fat, I'm too thin, I'm too this, I'm too that, and they get so familiar with that they are concerned about not having those self-identities. So look at what you think about yourself. Make a list on a piece of paper that nobody else will have to see, and list consistently everything until you can't think of anything else of your self-identity or how you think of yourself. Look at each one of those and then say, which one of these do I need to change? Which ones don't I like? You might want to keep some of them, and there may be some you want to get rid of, and then work on each individually.
There's a place for everything, like Stewart says, that in true reality everything is neutral. And this is a reality of duality, so therefore we bring in the positive and the negative, but we don't want to judge them as good or bad, and that's where people kind of get tied up in a matter of semantics, but yet there is a different frequency behind all of those things that I've just talked about. So we want to get to the point where we view each experience as neutral, which means you understand both sides, which are positive and negative, and that's what allows you to move on. The positives have negatives to them, the negatives have positives to them. And that's, again, all in decoding your life. It's much simpler than it may sound on the phone, but when you kind of understand that premise, then you can look from the objective observer, is the way I like to term it, to understand the totality of the experience, which then allows you to move along somewhere else. And when you get hung up in its positive, or you get hung up in its negative, that's where you stay for a while until you've learned everything, because ultimately you really are a finger of the God mind down here experiencing for the God mind itself. And when the God mind understands what it needs to understand, the experience is concluded, and then it goes away. So that's why we have to take a look at both sides. I mean, people love certain ideals, and so they go to war and they kill for that. So that, in my opinion, from my perspective, you can kill for love of things.
Right.
and people sometimes, it's the same with the negative. It's a good thing that there's certain things that I don't want in my life as well, because for me it's not a good thing. For you it might be an okay thing. So we just have to get to that neutral position as the objective observer so we can understand the totality of this reality. And then you can make more conscious choices of what you want to bring in. What recipe are you? Most people don't even know that. So before you can start creating something new, you have to understand where you are. When you understand where you are, then again, what do I want to keep and what do I want to release? And from there, then you start building. And that's a challenge.
Yeah, objective observer is a good way to put it. The word evil and the word live, just depends on what you look at it. It's the same word.
Right, and so I tell people, I said, hey, if you're a killer and you've killed somebody that day, that's a good day for you. If you're the person they killed, that's a bad day for you. It's
Right.
the same act. It just depends on where your mindset is. The God mind allows everything because it wants to know everything about itself. And that's a challenging concept for many people to grasp. But if you take a look back, and as you're talking about, you have to learn to go into the frequency. Stewart doesn't want you to say what he says is the truth, and I don't want to have you say what I say is the truth. We want to tell you what we know, which is your springboard into yourself, so you know by knowing for yourself what the truth is. We're just putting ideas out for you, but you don't parrot other people. You don't learn that way. Experience is how you learn. Get your own knowledge, do your own thing, and then you'll know for sure.
And in the topic of programming and deprogramming, so much is made about, mind control. Let's talk a little bit, just basically how that category, or I guess what I'm trying to say is others out there are trying to influence mind patterns. How would that work on a physical level? And let's just talk about the programming part before the deprogramming part. Who's influencing mind patterns and how?
Well, who is doing it is the Illuminati, and that's been going on for decades, if not centuries, in different ways. How does it work? First of all, they cannot put something in your mind for which there's not a basis. So, for example, if you're not a murderous person, they cannot program you to be a killer. So you have to have a foundational mind pattern that they can hook onto and then manipulate into something else. So if you are, for example, someone with an abandonment issue and emotional issues, they can program the monarch sex slave with you because they can use those emotions and fill it with ritual sex instead of unconditional love, that kind of a thing. And that's done through electromagnetic frequencies, microwave pulses. Basically, they fracture the mind pattern using trauma and torture and things like that in order to make the mind unable to handle what it's perceiving, and then the mind pattern splits into fragments in order to deal with the issues, and then each fragment can then be programmed into a subpersonality, full personality, etc. They usually base it on the person's lifetimes, their reincarnational lifetimes, their alternate selves within the aspects of their personality, etc. Basically, they can't force you to do what you wouldn't have done anyway under certain circumstances, and I believe that anyone is capable of almost anything, and that's why mind patterns and programming are so pervasive. If you fracture the mind, the most you can fracture, it goes into a structure energetically that looks like a cube of 13 by 13 by 13, and if you do the math, it comes out to 2,197 pieces that could then be programmed into subpersonalities, guardian alters, ribbon alters, internal programmer, constructs, etc. All kinds of things can be placed in the mind. And much of it is in a virtual world, so that much of it never comes to the forefront and takes control of the body unless it's triggered. And then there's an activation that occurs that puts the person into a function that they act out. Whether it's conscious or subconscious depends on the person's mind pattern. And this is transmitted through satellites, cell towers, television, radio, even the electrical currents in your home can have carrier waves that have mind control and programming on them.
And that answered my second question, because you had mentioned the electromagnetic devices that can be used to manipulate these frequencies, and I don't think a lot of people really understand what the television is. And that was the second part of that question, but you got it in there without me asking. So yeah, the television, the mind control box.
Yeah. Well, not just the television, but your computers, your cell phones, they all contain chips that are always on, even if the electricity isn't on. And, and so your TV, you turn it off, it's still watching you and
Right.
can monitor you.
And people, and I've brought that up in many conversations, and they don't understand. They think that's impossible. I say, well, a telephone sends phonics two ways. A telegraph sends graphics two ways. Teleporter, it has a port on two ends. It's a television, so obviously there's vision going both ways. But
Yeah, and there are devices in there. In fact, I know people who are engineers who said that there are these devices within these new television sets that the manufacturers will not explain what they are. So it's not a la-la thing, it's a physical truth that's going on.
right, and I forget who it was that said something to the effect of, super high technology and magic will soon be indiscernible, or something along those lines. Yeah,
That's right. Well, they do match each other.
yep. And here's kind of a sub-question to programming. Neuro-linguistic programming is the buzzword in the alternative media now that Barack Hussein, the long-legged Mac Daddy, is our alleged president. I think a lot of people are pretty familiar with speech patterns and well, first of all, for anybody that isn't familiar, what is neuro-linguistic programming?
Well, that is it's a very, I have to give a very short answer, but basically it's a conditioning for when you use a certain action with your hands, your mouth, you use certain words, and it triggers a reaction in yourself or another person. So if I flick my finger 3 times, it will make you do X, Y, and Z. That kind of a thing. Or if I say a certain word, it should mean certain things to you to create a function within you. And it can get a little bit complicated in how you program yourself to do that. For example, some people might say, well, I always forget my car keys, so I used NLP to make sure that I never forget them, so that when I, blink my eye, that means I have to look for my car keys and I always know where they are. I'm making it very simple, but it's something like that. You need to be in control of your own mind and not let anyone do that for you. And yes, that's a whole other topic, but the president is a setup, of course, and they have been for quite a long time. But this one particularly is being set up to change the United States into something that we will not ever even recognize again.
We've mentioned several of your guys' books. Let's tell everybody what else you have to offer in this regard, and where they can go and how they can get it.
Janet, you want to take care of that?
Well, the first thing I'd like to do is to invite everyone to sign up for our free newsletter on the home page. We are in the process of redoing our site, so everything is changing, and all the changes, when we flick the switch, it's going to go really fast. And the best way that you can stay informed is by signing up for our free newsletter on the home page on the right-hand side, so be sure that you do that. We also have coming up very shortly here, this October 15, 16, 17, we have our fall conference called True World History and Beyond, which is an amazing event. It will blow your mind away. If you thought you knew history, you absolutely do not. You want to be at this conference. The seats are going fast, and we don't have very many spaces left, but it's going to be an amazing, amazing event. So October 15, 16, and 17. We have in January a time travel adventure to Cabo San Lucas called Dolphins, Whales, Lemuria, and You, which is also going to be an amazing event. And on our website, we have tons of books, DVDs, visual aids, so lots of free advice on there. And again, we're going to be changing really fast. Please sign up for that free newsletter. Homepage, right-hand side.
And that's expansions.com.
Expansions.com.
Expansions with an S. How did you get into this work in a nutshell? What led you down this path, so to speak?
Well, to be honest with you, there was no other path. It's a path that I woke up when I was born. Here I am. This is what I've always done.
Excellent.
Yeah, basically the same for me, and of course, I'm sure many of your listeners know that I was in Montauk Project, and that basically opened me up even further, and that's a very long story, so they can read about that in my Montauk Alien Connection book.
What do you guys, since you're the authors, what do you recommend as a starter, or what piece of material would you have someone go to first?
Well, there's two things. If they like books, the Decoding Your Life book and Hyperspace Helper, those are excellent books to start with. If they like DVDs, the Hyperspace and Oversoul Basics is excellent. And my high recommendation is to have all those three things. And if you've got that, you can springboard off into a zillion different ways in our material. We go deeper and deeper and deeper. So if you like it, it resonates, it works for you, everything we have out there will take you into another facet of this very fascinating world that we live in.
Who has inspired you two along the way?
My biggest inspiration was my father, and continues to be.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and I guess the same for me. My inspiration in my early life was my grandmother, who was a gypsy who ran away with the caravans in Europe when she was little, and basically taught me how to open my mind and look beyond the non-physical. As far as authors are concerned, a friend of ours and one whose research I trust is David Icke.
Excellent.
You know, as far as one last statement, I would just tell people that in the next few weeks and months they're going to hear and see things that might shock them in the world, on the news. Not to believe any of it. It's all staged, and you must change whatever part you've projected out in it to help create that so that you can change it. It's all up to you.
And buying into that, you can't do this, you can't do that, and you have all these roadblocks. You are connected to the strongest force available, self, oversoul, God, mind. And when you go back to that basic and you understand that what's behind you and the personal power that you are capable of expressing, you should live a total life of limitlessness. It's amazing what you can do. So step up to the plate and take that personal power and go for it.
Excellent. I can't thank you guys enough for extending the interview. You have an open invitation anytime you want to get a hold of me, and I can broadcast to my small but growing audience anything you'd like. And again, I can't thank you enough. You guys have inspired me, and so I just wanted to share that with other people.
No, we appreciate your interest, and as I said, it sounds like we're kind of along the same page. So we appreciate that, and we do get busy. So if you have, if you start thinking, well, I haven't heard from Janet and Stewart for a while, just give us a call, and we'll certainly come on your show when we have space available.
All right. I again, thank you very much, and I look forward to it next time.
Thank you, Jacob, very much.
Thank you, Stewart. Thank you, Janet.
You're welcome. Have a great day.
You too. Bye.
Bye-bye.